Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me, Dr. Charlotte Proudman, for this live session with the amazing CEDAW People's Tribunal. I'm a barrister at Goldsmith Chambers, where I specialise in family law and also immigration law and more broadly, violence against women and girls. And I've been a campaigner for, goodness, many years now on women's rights, and particularly making sure that women have equal access to the law and equal protection through the law as well, and that discrimination is eliminated against women. And the reason that I care about this so much is because in all walks of life, but particularly in the law, I see women directly impacted by men's violence towards them. 97% of women experience sexual harassment in public, which is an extraordinary figure. When you imagine that of 100 women that you see, 97% of those will have been sexually harassed in public. Sometimes it can be so bad that girls are not able to access education. They're scared of walking home on their own at night, or can't even take the tube, the underground, because of sexual harassment that makes them feel unsafe in public. And that should never happen, particularly in 2021. And we know that a woman is murdered, killed by a man every 3 days. Which is, again, another extraordinary statistic to think that that is happening, and frankly, very little is being done about it. And over 1 million women experience domestic abuse just in 1 year. And then there's, of course, the huge numbers of call-outs that are made to the police for domestic abuse, and the very low numbers of prosecutions, and the almost decriminalization of rape in our society. Just 1,000 convictions for rape in 1 year in 2020, despite the fact 85,000 women are raped or sexually assaulted each year. So yes, I care very deeply because I speak about statistics, but I work with women on a day-to-day basis. And so I see the impact that it has on their lives, not just in the immediate future, but also long-term, and of course their children's lives as well. Now, I'm a huge advocate and supporter, and I'm delighted to say I'm a patron of CEDAW, the People's Tribunal, and I fully support a women's Bill of Rights. I think we need an overarching bill for women's rights. So a Bill of Rights that includes political rights, social rights, legal rights, access to education, civil rights, everything should be encompassed. So that we can make it very clear, crystal clear in law, that we should have equal access within our society and the law more generally. One of the issues that I see, for example, I know CEDAW would want to address, is something such as a victim of domestic abuse or rape or coercive and controlling behaviour being told that they must enter into mediation with their perpetrator. And that's something that I see happen in the family courts on very sad to say, sometimes a frequent basis. And CEDAW makes it crystal clear that that should never happen. That's another form of re-traumatization and re-victimization, and it's another form of abuse. And our court should never, never be a state-based operation that is perpetuating that abuse. It should be there to protect victims and support them. And other things that CEDAW supports, along which aligns with my values and my views and the work that I do, is, for example, judicial training. It makes it very clear that all judges hearing cases of rape, domestic abuse, coercive and controlling behaviour should be trained to understand these complex dynamics. You don't go to a dentist with a broken leg. No, you don't, because you need an expert. You need someone who's a specialist in that area. And similarly, you expect when a judge is hearing a case about these serious allegations to be properly equipped and understanding that just because a woman remains and fails to escape an abusive relationship, it doesn't mean that she's complicit in that abuse or that she's lying about it. You know, simple things such as that, or just because a woman has enjoyed consensual sex on one occasion or other occasions with a man, it doesn't mean that she can't have been raped on another occasion. And these things should be taught to judges so that they're not falling into similar traps of stereotypes and tropes that we see in the media and in society more generally. And that's something CEDAW fully support, along with myself. And although I tried to help in amending the domestic abuse bill, as it then was, now the Act, at the time I helped draft some amendments on this particular issue to make sure that as judicial training, it wasn't accepted by the government, which is astonishing and frankly appalling. So I'm here, fully supportive of CEDAW, having given evidence at their incredible tribunal, which culminated in a brilliant report written by some of the most phenomenal experts in these issues in our country. And I'm here to speak with you about some of the work that I do. And I wanted to speak with you about my campaign work to outlaw and criminalise public sexual harassment. And I've been working on this campaign for a number of years, and it started with two amazing sisters called Gemma and Maya Tutton. And they started an organisation, a lobby group called Our Streets Now, which is a young, fresh campaign group at grassroots level of young women and girls that want to outlaw this type of abuse so they can feel safe in society. And I also worked alongside Plan UK, a very notorious organisation that does incredible work in these areas, and another lawyer, Dexter Dias QC, who is a formidable criminal law barrister. And together we all worked on this campaign, and Dexter and I helped to draft a bill which made it very clear that public sexual harassment would be a criminal offence. And this bill was sent to various people within government and other MPs, and we received an awful lot of support from them, and also from NGOs and other bodies, and of course, an enormous amount of grassroots support. And so we were really delighted when we saw the Law Commission report, which said that certainly this issue should be looked at more closely, and that there should be some form of offence which would outlaw this type of insidious abuse, because we're not speaking about catcalling, and even that term should never be used because it diminishes the kind of harm that women experience in public spaces. But we're not speaking about just wolf whistling or shouting, oh, you look hot or you look sexy, even though it's not nice to experience that. And you know what, it can have quite an impact on your self-esteem and may make you feel unsafe. No, we're speaking about the really insidious, corrosive forms of abuse, which can often be relentless in a short period of time. So for example, making objectifying comments about your body, about your physical appearance, doing it in a demeaning fashion to humiliate you, to degrade you, to demean you, to take away your dignity. That's what we're speaking about. And, you know, by outlawing this, it then puts a duty on the police to make sure that when these types of reports are made, they have an obligation, a duty to properly investigate, because at the moment, we know that women and girls are reporting these types of crimes to the police. I say crimes, but in fact, the police turn them away and say it's not a criminal offence. So what's happening here? It seems that there are no, or if certainly none, then very few prosecutions for some of the most horrendous things that happens on our street, because women are marginalised, and frankly, the law is blind to the specific daily lived realities and experiences of women. 97% of women experience this, and yet we don't even have a law to criminalise it. That's how normalised it is. And when people say, well, look, let's not introduce another law, let's change attitudes and behaviours. Well, frankly, I have no tolerance for that. We have waited centuries to end this type of abuse. And in 2021, and if anything, it's got worse, particularly with the growth of social media, access to the internet, and other forums where this abuse can continue online. So that holds no water with me whatsoever. And why is it that we should just sit back and wait and just accept the fact that this abuse is going to continue because our law can't keep up? Our law has a duty to protect young girls and to hold men and even, you know, adolescent men as well, who should know better, to hold them to account, particularly when they're doing this to a number of young women and doing it intentionally so they don't feel safe and enjoying that. That must be criminalised. And certainly it's part of the Istanbul Convention. And if the UK is committed to ratifying it, then they must make that a crime. So I hope that I've made a compelling enough case for that. And I'm delighted that the Law Commission is positive and supportive. But yet again, the government we need actions, we need deeds, not words, and the government needs to commit to this. We have a bill, we've drafted it, it's there, make it happen. And the next issue that I wanted to speak with you about is an incredible appeal, a long-running case that I was involved in. I had the great honour and privilege of representing Kate Griffiths, MP, who is an amazing woman. I represented her over, almost 2 years. And the case started when she had made allegations against a man named Andrew Griffiths, who was a former MP and minister, the Conservative Party. And they were in a relationship together, they were married, they had a child. And subsequent to their separation, they separated because, in fact, he had been involved in a sexting scandal, as it's known. But again, it diminishes the gravity. Language can often do that, the gravity of the sexual and depraved nature of his messages. They were so violent, messages that were sent to two constituents, that even the Daily Mail couldn't print them. That shows how bad and horrendous they were. So he sent these messages to female constituents, that was exposed, the marriage broke down. He lost his position as an MP when the amazing, remarkable Kate Griffiths stood against him. And she became the MP of Burton-upon-Trent, and my goodness, is she doing a marvellous job. Well, it didn't end there. Little did the public know that there was rumbling on a family court case in Derby. And that court case was there to address whether Mr. Griffiths could have contact with their child. And Kate Griffiths said, actually, he's a risk. He's a significant risk to this child. He loses his temper and he's abusive. And she made allegations of rape, domestic abuse, and coercive and controlling behaviour. And she also said that he'd been abusive to the child. And the family court judge made every single finding. They found that he'd raped her in her sleep, he'd hit her, he put his hands around her neck, her throat. He'd even physically assaulted her when she was 9 months pregnant. And it went on and on and on. And this included post-separation coercive and controlling behaviour, even blaming his attempted suicide attempt on her as a means to control her. He even shouted, "Shut the fuck up," to the child when she was just weeks old. So this abuse ran deep, and there's a lot more than that, and I'd encourage you to read the judgment. So whilst you might think, well, she's vindicated, she has findings from the family court on the balance of probabilities, which means that it's more likely than not that this abuse happened. No, didn't end there. Two journalists, Louise Tickle and Brian Farmer from the Press Association, remarkable people, they applied for the judgment to be made public. Not just public, but they wanted the parties' names attached. And Kate Griffiths MP, my client, gave this a lot of thought, and she agreed. And she said, you know what, this should be published because I think that it can help other women in a similar position to myself. It might even encourage women to come forward and to put some trust and faith in the family justice system. And she wanted to use her platform as a member of parliament to support and advocate on behalf of others, to speak to constituents and to say to them, I understand. And she understands because she's going through it, she's been through it. And the High Court agreed, and they said, yes, this judgment should be published. The world should know what he has done to her. She didn't want to be silenced any longer. You see, Andrew Griffiths had said to her in the marriage that if she told anyone about the abuse, she wouldn't be believed because he is an MP. He used his position of power as an MP and a minister to silence her. And by preventing her from speaking out, and in the family courts, everything is private, everything is secret. You can't speak out without permission of the court. But by preventing her from speaking out, he was continuing his control by continuing to silence her. In any event, the High Court agreed, it was made public. He then appealed that decision of the High Court, and it went to the Court of Appeal. And I represented Kate Griffiths MP again at the Court of Appeal in November, and we won. We won, and she is vindicated. That judgment was made public on Friday at 2 p.m. and the world knew what had happened. It became breaking news, and she has had nothing but support, a huge, tremendous amount of support. I say all of that with an enormous amount of positivity, but that case is not over. You see, there's another appeal. I appealed a decision of a judge which said that despite Andrew Griffiths having raped, abused and controlled her and been abusive to the child, he should still have supervised contact with the child. So what was the point in her going through this grueling trial where she was told she's lying, she wouldn't be believed, she was making it up? What was the point in all of that if he was going to get contact in any event? And not only that, the court also said that she should pay half of his contact costs. So let's just think about that. That's a rape victim subsidizing a rapist's contact costs. She's subsidizing him. And not only that, she'd previously been paying contact costs when he wasn't even paying any maintenance. And she's a single parent. My goodness. So I said this is another form of abuse and financial control, but this time perpetrated by the family courts. And I appealed, and we're waiting for the decision in that case. But Kate Griffiths MP isn't the only person out there that's going through all of this. I have clients day in, day out that have been ordered to pay perpetrators' costs, that have been ordered to pay for their psychiatric or psychological assessment, yet they are the ones who are at risk, and victims are the ones paying for them. Needless to say, it doesn't hold much weight with me. And as a campaigner and a vocal critic of the family courts, sometimes they get it right, but sometimes they get it wrong. And we need to make sure that that's transparent. The Ministry of Justice's harm report published in June of last year showed that the family court operates a pro-contact culture, pro-contact at all costs. And in my view, Kate Griffiths' case is another example of that. Why are we putting so much on this young child? Why are we telling this young child, just a few years old, why are we saying to her, to this kid, that actually she should forgive him, feel sympathy? Why are we saying that to them? You know, isn't that putting an enormous amount on that child's shoulders? Imagine if you're a teenager and you learn that your father has raped your mother, and then the family courts forced you into an artificial relationship with them. And not only that, your mother had to facilitate the contact and pay for it. How would you feel? Most would feel angry, embittered. The fact they've been forced into this, forced to feel sympathy for them. Isn't that child abuse? And I ask that as a question, a real question, because others have campaigned to take away parental responsibility of rapists. It's something I would fully support. And others have even brought prosecutions against their father for raping their mother. That was the full force of how that child, now adult, felt. So there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be done across the criminal justice system, the family justice system, the civil justice system, and the immigration system, everywhere. There's a lot to be done politically, within the media, within the legal system, across society. And that is why we need a Women's Bill of Rights. And that's why I fully support CEDAW, and I always have. And I'd encourage you to support it. The Domestic Abuse Bill Now Act did not go far enough. We tried, but it didn't. We still haven't ratified the Istanbul Convention, and we do need CEDAW. And I will not stop campaigning for that until we have it enshrined within our legislation to make it crystal clear that we are equal citizens and we must be treated as such before the courts. So thank you very much for listening to me, and do follow me on Twitter at Dr. Proudman, and also on Instagram at Dr. Proudman. And believe it or not, I also have a TikTok account, and you're welcome to follow me and Teddy, my little dog, who's also a vocal feminist. Thanks very much. Bye.